Hi, it's Alistair at Electric Scotland. I wanted to do a video about Scottish independence, and this is done in July 2020. The reason for doing it is just the last week or so I've been reading a number of articles about Scottish independence and how the SNP are doing. And there's a lot of comments about how the Scottish Conservative Party, who are meant to be unionists, are failing to do anything much to counter the SNP's apparent rise in their independence efforts, shall we say. I will say here that I don't support the Scottish independence argument. I once did, but I no longer do. And it's really because I've read very widely, and I've rethought a lot of the situations, and I wanted to kind of bring this to you, for you perhaps to consider. I mean, firstly, I have on my website, Electric Scotland, got a Scots diaspora section of the site. And part of the Scots diaspora, of course, have resided in England. Now, I think the thing to be said here is that if you consider that the one major, shall we say, effort that Scotland put in pre the Union was to create the Darien scheme, which basically was to establish a plantation in South America, which should be a hub for going around the world. The problem was it wasn't actually very well thought out, because at the time we were at war with Spain, and the English weren't overly happy with us at the time because they saw us as a competitor. But the fact of the matter is that we picked a very poor place to settle, and the English and Spanish also blockaded the area, so we couldn't get resupplies in and stuff like that. And there's a whole books about the Darien scheme, which you can read, and I have some on the website as well, so you can use that resource to study it. But the fact of the matter is, it was a total failure, and virtually bankrupted Scotland, because most of the wealthy people in Scotland and a lot of not so wealthy people invested what they could in the scheme, and they totally lost all their money. Now, after Scotland and England and Wales merged into one country, the English did in fact give Scotland quite a major break in returning a lot of funds to Scotland to help compensate the dire circumstances we were in. So that helped a lot. But then it took several decades for the Scots to wake up, I think, to the advantages of being part of the British Empire, or shall we say, part of the United Kingdom. But when they did wake up to the fact, they realised there was a lot of potential for Scots and Scotland to do really well. And that's why I've got the Scots diaspora section on the site, because Scots literally went all over the world representing the United Kingdom and United Kingdom businesses. And they were immensely successful, immensely successful. And so what concerns me is that big investment we had in the UK should be literally given up to become an independent country again. And I think any non-biased people would agree that we're going to take at least a £10 billion hit if Scotland went independent. Now, That's a lot of money. And I think on this coronavirus situation, Scotland's getting another billion in its coffers to compensate for the money that's been spent in England on the coronavirus relief scheme. And that's not counting other schemes that the UK Parliament have voted for Scotland. The thing is that we share. So if you look at Kevin Haigh of Chocoblog fame, he's got a business, I think, in Cumbernauld, the pet food business in Cumbernauld. But he's become a bit of an expert on the finances of Scotland. He hasn't written anything for quite some months now. I think the last post he put up was in February of this year. But I have got a few links to some of his reports on this website. So if you did a search for Chokka, CHACHOKKA, you'll find his reports. But essentially he was studying the finances of Scotland and I think showing that we would have great difficulty in making us an independent country. And I think you have to at least take his research into account when making your decisions about where we're going in the future. From my point of view, I saw by studying the English history of Scotland, Scots in England, that one period of about 50 years, I think something like 130 locally born Scots became the members of Parliament for English constituencies. And at the same time that we've had several Scottish Prime Ministers of the United Kingdom, with a lot of Treasury Secretaries have been Scots, a lot of Foreign Affairs people have been Scots. The Scots have been well represented in the Cabinet of the United Kingdom over almost all the lifetime of the United Kingdom. And then when you look at the British Empire, Scots played an enormous role in that empire, building it. And again, if you want to look at it, go look at India. We've got a ton of information on India, but here you'll see that Scots were Governor Generals of India. They were leading army people there. What the Scots did in India was just amazing. I think it's well worth your time looking at it and looking what they did and what they achieved. But equally well, we've been to other countries of the world where Scots have gone. Take Canada, Australia, New Zealand. Huge impact we had on those countries. Huge. We want to go independent, so we're basically saying all you Scots there went there and did fantastic things. Your time is gone. Finished. You're dead. We now want to be a member of the European Union. I think you want to dig into why you want to be a member of the European Union. Scots want independence to do their own thing. Why shouldn't the United Kingdom be independent outside of the EU to do our own thing? So if you want Scotland to be independent, you should be backing the UK to be independent. But if you're two-faced about it, of course you'll say, no, we must be independent, but in the EU. The trouble is, independence in the EU is impossible. Unless you're prepared to give in to Germany, France, everyone else. I'm very much proud of us voting to come out. And I think the last election where Conservatives got in by a landslide, I think that just showed that the British people wanted out. Maybe not the Scottish people. I will admit, Scotland is at odds. I know why they're at odds. I think I put it down to education, because our education system is probably the worst in the UK now. It used to be the best in the world. It's now not. It's probably below average in the world now. And that's the thing that Nicola Sturgeon asked you to judge her on, and if you judge her fairly on her track record of education, she'd have gone by now. But no, unfortunately, because the Scots are getting stupider as the years go on, unfortunately, the SNP like that, because the stupider you are, the more likely you are to vote for the SNP. That's my view. And I am biased, I will say. But the thing is, Scotland's got a devolved government which has huge powers. So there's no point in whinging on about Westminster. The SNP have got all the tools they need to run a good education system, a good NHS, run a good justice system. You know, and I mean, they've just mishandled it. They're inept. If I would say that all MSPs or whatever party in Scotland are on the whole poor quality people. We don't have any statesmen in Scotland anymore. No one with a big vision for Scotland. Everyone's just small-minded. And I don't like that at all. I think we've got to get better people in Parliament. The Scottish Parliament. But what I'm trying to say here is, if you look at what we've achieved in Australia, New Zealand, India, Canada, United States, Argentina for that matter, I mean, we've achieved immense success. And out in Hong Kong, Asia, I mean, huge success. Scots firms have gone out there and just one hand over fist all over the place, become multi-billion-dollar companies. And we've hundreds of thousands of Scots have died fighting for the empire. And yet you want to get rid of your ties with the UK, where Scots spent blood, toil, sweat and tears on building the empire. You want to ditch all that. You're stupid. You really are stupid if you want to do that. I mean, Scotland leaving the United Kingdom is not a failure for the UK. The UK, or the rest of the UK you might call it, will get on very well without Scotland. We don't need Scotland in the UK. We really genuinely don't need it, because it's costing us an arm and a leg anyway to support Scotland. But that's what the Union Agreement did. That we agreed to support, share, good times and bad times. And we're in bad times right now, and Scotland's benefiting from the UK. That's fact. I mean, look at Kevin Hague, Chock-a-Block. I've got reports on the site, but if you go to the web and do a search for Kevin Hague, Hague, basically you'll find his very good reports on the state of Scotland's finances and the way that they're mishandling them, basically. So I'm just saying here that financially we're better off in the UK. That's just a fact, and it's undisputable unless you're ignorant and stupid and so biased that you won't even consider that point. And don't forget, 60% of all Scotland's exports go to England alone. So that's by far our biggest market. You want to drop our biggest market? You see how stupid it is? It really is stupid. And can you honestly think that if Scotland became an independent country, the English would want to do a lot of business with Scotland? I mean, the attitude really is that you've had enough. I mean, a lot of the English people, I think 15% of the English would be perfectly happy if Scotland just went away. But that's life, you know? I mean, that's just the way things are going. That's by Nicola Sturgeon moaning on all the blinking time, constantly going on about that the English are nasty people, won't let Scotland do this, that and the next thing. Of course, a lot of the reasons she's not getting what she wants is that I think England realises how bad that would be for Scotland. But they're incompetent in Scotland, so they don't understand it. We've got a finance minister now in Scotland that has no financial background whatsoever. I mean, that's what I mean. The Conservative Party in Scotland is pathetic, useless. They haven't a clue what they're doing. The Labour Party also don't know what they're doing. The SNP know what they're doing. They want independence. Whether it's good for Scotland or not, they want independence. It's the end of the story. Once they got independence, they couldn't give a damn about Scotland because they've got what they wanted. They don't care if everyone gets poorer under it. And we would. Everyone. In fact, the worst of, the poorest of them all will be even poorer because we won't have the money to fund the social security payments. It's a disaster. But my whole point here is that we've invested hundreds of years of work in the British Empire, working to improve Britain's place in it. And frankly, I think we've done an enormously good job. And we need to benefit from these years of work and the thousands of Scots who died to get us to that point. And to give up on the United Kingdom is just a waste of all those many years of investment that we had by our own people. And right now, remember, it was a period in I think it was the 1800s, where, as I say, Scots born in Scotland were members of Parliament for 130 English constituencies. So, our impact in England was amazing, far bigger than we could have had anywhere else. And we still have a lot of Scottish representation in the cabinets and various places within England, the Westminster Parliament. I think basically the investment of hundreds of years by Scots in the United Kingdom and for the United Kingdom all over the world should be respected and should be honoured, and we should stick with the UK in my view. But as I say, don't just accept my word. Go and read it. I've got tons of history, and that's genuine history. It's not me picking it out. But go to Argentina. I've got a couple of great books on the Scots in Argentina. And that's just one example of how we've invested in South America. Look at the Scots in France. I got a huge amount about the Scots in France. Huge amount on the Scots in New Zealand, Australia and Canada. Huge amount about Scots in America. I think it's something like 10% of the millionaires in America are of Scots descent, or of Scots heritage, one way or another, either today or in the past. We had an enormous impact on Portugal. 65% of the Icelandic women who tested for DNA have Scottish heritage. Germany, a lot of Scots in Germany, a lot of Scots in Russia. I mean, we've got Scots literally all over the world. And to say Scots in Poland, I mean, Poles account for one of the biggest number of ethnic groups in Scotland. But there was a time when Poland was considered to be the mother of Scottish businesses. Amazing. So I'd encourage you to go to the Scots diaspora and learn about the Scots all over the world. I've done amazing work, amazing people we had back then. I wish we had the calibre of people today that we had then. We simply don't have the calibre of people anymore in Scotland. As I say, most of our MSPs are they're really idiots. They've no passion, they've no real ideas of the future. I mean, the SNP are run by Sturgeon and Swinney, really, at the end of the day. What they say, the rest have to accept, otherwise they're out of the party. Frankly, I'd rather leave the party and be an independent. and then fight the SNP. I think the SNP have dragged Scotland down, and it's time we stopped it. They haven't had a successful major IT programme ever. Every single thing they've tried has been a failure, cost enormously more than budgeted, and didn't even deliver at the end of the day, even with many more millions of pounds going into the projects. And it's down to SNP's central control. They want to control everything, because they're scared stiff if they lose the control, they'll be wiped out. And so they will be. I mean, do you know who your local MSP is? I bet you a lot don't. Do you know how many how many MSPs could you name? I bet you can hardly name anyone. And that's the problem. The MSPs in the Scottish Holyrood Parliament are a waste of time. Total waste. We've got to pick better people. Got to pick better people. And I think we have to be prepared to reject the MSPs that are put up for us to elect, and we should pick our own people that would do a great job for the country. But certainly if we were independent, we don't have the calibre of people in Holyrood that could run an independent Scotland. All Nicola Sturgeon wants to do is hand over all foreign relations to Europe, because she knows she could not run an independent country and deal with the world. She hasn't the clue, she hasn't got the mental capacity, hasn't got the people. She would have to hand it over to the EU, and that's why she wants to belong to the EU, because she realises that if Scotland became independent, Scotland couldn't run itself in the world. It would have to rely on the EU to negotiate deals for them. Whereas, luckily, the UK has the people that we can run our own affairs. Scotland couldn't do it. And I say, don't forget, she's very disingenuous. She's not an outright liar. She's more subtle than that. As I say, I've always said I wrote to her because I couldn't understand why she was so fixated on being a member of the EU. Remember, she said if Scotland became independent, she would not have a vote on whether to be a member of the EU or not. She said, well, go in because it's the thing to do. And I wanted to know why she said that. And she wrote back to me, well, through her people, saying that the EU was the largest export market for Scottish goods. And in actual fact, it was quite correct. What she didn't say, and this is where she says this so many times, she doesn't give you a complete picture, she gives you a biased picture. It's because England alone, who is a member of the EU, and therefore within that market, took 60% of our exports. And so if you took England out of the equation, England becomes the largest export market by far, and then the EU will come in way down. In fact, America was the second largest market, and then the EU, if you took England out of the equation. So, I mean, that's not telling you the truth. That's telling you that she has another motive for wanting to be a member of the EU. And I'm telling you the motive is she knows she cannot run international relations for the world as an independent Scotland. Because we'd have to have embassies all over the place and trade representatives in all the countries of the world. She couldn't afford it. And she doesn't have the calibre of people that could handle these posts. Therefore, she would have to rely on the EU to run foreign affairs. So Scotland's really not an independent country anymore. It's, again, part of the EU. So Scotland, as an independent country in the EU, is dead. I mean, it cannot be an independent country if it's reliant on the EU. End of story. So if you're going to be an independent Scotland, you can't be part of the European Union. And I would also argue that if you think about, is she preparing for an independent Scotland? No, she's not. Because if she was, she'd be trying to open up trade classes at university, so people who want to go into the trade area would be trained up to be a trade negotiator for Scotland in the future. She's made no plans for that at all, and that's another problem with the SNP. They don't plan ahead. So they keep hitting problems and snags because they haven't thought the thing through. And I mean, look at the people that are employed as special consultants in Scotland. It's the names that come up time and time and time and time again. because they're SNP loyalists. But a lot of them are useless, pathetic people. They have no vision for the country or anything. She needs to people. I mean, it shouldn't matter what party you represent, but if you're good at a particular job, you should be used in the consultancy process. I mean, you need to be able to take unpleasant answers. If you got a lot of yes people, it's a waste of time. So, that's what I would argue, that the SNP are not transparent. And things like the named person scheme that they tried to force through, it was the EU eventually that blocked that because it was against EU regulations. I think that really burned the SNP something rotten, because they were the ones that wanted to be in the EU. But now they realise that from the EU doesn't mean to say they're going to get all the little plans through. And we actually had some paedophiles that were found to be applying for these named person schemes. And I think one of them had already been appointed. And who was going to run these named persons? Teachers, doctors, all the kind of people that are overworked like anything. But no, they would take on this extra load. That's where the SNP are stupid. They haven't a clue. Haven't a clue. So, I think overall, you have to look at the finances, because at the end of the day, if we don't have the money in independent Scotland, then we cannot pay out the social security benefits and all the things that we're giving at the moment. We wouldn't have the money to do it. It'd have to be cut back. This pandemic has showed just how vulnerable Scotland would have been. If we'd been an independent country at the height of this pandemic, we'd be a basket case right now. We'd be totally dead in the water. So you have to understand the finances and ask yourself, financially, can we do it? And frankly, the answer right now is no, we cannot do it. And then emotional. Well, why aren't you emotional about the UK and the old British Empire that did so well in the world? And our Scots that went out there and won the world for Britain. We got amazing people that were leaders in a lot of these countries of the world. I mean, a lot of the prime ministers and various people in these countries were also Scots. I mean, look at America, the presidents of Scots descent. Amazing, Scots and Scots-Irish. Because remember, the Scots-Irish are really mostly from the borders of Scotland. They went to Northern Ireland, and that's where it became Scots-Irish. So the Scots-Irish are from Scots descent. That's why they trace themselves back to Scotland. But the Scots-Irish in particular did a brilliant job in America. And in Canada, the Scots, make up 15% today of the Scottish population, of the Canadian population. Right now we're going into talks with CanZ UK. This is UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And we're going into talks with Australia and New Zealand at the moment. And we hope to get a good free trade relationship with them. I think Canada will be coming on quite soon as well. So the CanZ UK countries all make up the fourth largest trading bloc in the world. And don't forget India, which is the second largest country in population terms, is part of Commonwealth. A lot of Africa is part of the Commonwealth. So when you look at the potential, because the Queen is the head of the Commonwealth, and Prince Charles will become the head of the Commonwealth when it's his time. So I think the future for the UK is amazing. Pandemics hurt us, but it's hurt everyone equally badly. And I think we all need to work together to get it sorted out. But as I say, I don't think this is the time for Scotland to be looking at independence. I really don't. I think if they want independence, they're going to have to prove that they can be a proper independent country. Get the heart out of it. Practicalities come at the end of the day. It's practicalities about food on the table. So, all I'm saying is, look at our Scots diaspora section. I mean, it's letchatscotland.com, historyworld.htm. Go there and you'll see a lot of information. And do look at the English bit, because you'll see what the Scots have achieved in England. I mean, part of England's success is Scotland's success as well. And right now there are at least 750,000 locally born Scots that live and work in England right now, today. That's a lot of people. Certainly bigger than the population of Edinburgh or Glasgow. So, please have a think, because if you're going to vote independence for Scotland, then you have made a commitment that could cost you and your families dear in the years ahead. So, I think you owe it to the next generation of Scots to really think this through and get your own answers by studying the history and by studying how we're doing today as regards how we went back several hundred years ago. But I mean, don't just go by the heart, I want Scotland to be independent. The thing is, why should Scotland be independent? Because I think it's more independent as part of the UK than it ever would be if it was genuinely independent. Because I don't think it would be, because we'd be in the EU, therefore Scotland would not be an independent country when it's reliant on the EU. I mean, it's simple in my view. And why so many Scots want to remain in the EU. I mean, you might think it's great long relations with France. I got to tell you, the old alliance, study it, you'll see that France got a lot more out of it than Scotland did. A lot more out of it. So it didn't really benefit Scotland as such. In fact, Flodden was an example. I mean, a lot of our leaders in Scotland died because we were committed to France, which is why we went to Flodden. So, I mean, look at the histories, learn from the histories, and then apply it to today. I can only say to you that I think we're much better than the United Kingdom, and we'd be even better if the SNP would work with England to do better for Scotland. But because they keep carping at England, all they're doing is gradually turning the English against Scotland, and that has implications on our export business and our general trade with England. So please think about it, and hopefully if a few of you at least start to think about it and study it, that you might come to the conclusion that we are actually better off in the UK. So thanks for listening, and as I hope you'll follow up on this site and get the historic information. Thanks.